When was the last time you had a conversation with your merchant service provider? Have you regularly reviewed the processing fees and how much your business is paying per transaction? Well, if you haven't, it's a key area to take a look at within your business because every dollar saved actually drops directly down to the bottom line, which means more profit for you. So, in this episode of The Ownership Advantage, I sit down with Kris Minton, who is the Texas sales manager at Electronic Cash Systems, or ECS. Kris and I sit down and we have a wonderful conversation with a ton of valuable nuggets for you as a business owner, where we talk about payment processing. We talk about the different levels of merchant services, the integrations, how easy it is to take a transaction within your business, and really, are we even processing our transactions correctly? So lots of different fun things in this particular conversation. It was enlightening, it was educational, it was fun, it was lighthearted. So I'm excited to get you to this conversation between myself and Kris Minton. Well, welcome to the Ownership Advantage podcast. My name is Tanner Bryan. I'm a senior partner here at Action Coach in Central Texas. And today we've got some conversation around merchant services, point of sale services, kind of all the fun stuff when it comes to some different aspects of business financing for all you business owners out there. So I'm sitting down today with Kris Minton. I am so excited to be jumping in. Kris, I'm going to let you kind of talk a little bit about, your background, the business you represent, and maybe just a little bit of your what we need to know on the front end before we dive into a little bit of specific questions, things like that. But for the audience that hasn't met you before, give us just a little preview. Who is Kris?
Great. My name's Kris Minton. I work for a company called ECS Payments. We're a full-scale payment processor. We're also known as US Alliance Group, and we're an umbrella company. So ultimately, US Alliance Group's at the top. Then we have a bunch of flowing companies underneath, all the way from your bread and butter debit and credit card processing, which is ECS Payments, all the way to our nonprofits as well. So we do a lot of nonprofits here in the United States or across the world when it comes to helping build homes and schools for people around the world. So it's an awesome company to work for overall. We're not just a merchant service provider. We help those around us as well in the community. So that's one of the great things about our company. But overall, our company was created by our fearless leader, Fadi Sheikha, back in 1997, and he's been in the industry ultimately since day one. So he has built and created some solutions today that a lot of payment processors use as well that have kind of shaped what this industry is today. So US Alliance Group / ECS Payments is very lucky to have him as a leader and someone that is able to keep us at the front of solutions when it comes to softwares, point of sale, things like that. And as for me, been in the industry for about a decade now. Crazy to even think about. I've been in it for this long, but I love every bit of it. Kind of what I just said. My CEO took a chance on me. I just finished my career playing soccer and didn't really know what to do. So I was selling cars at the time and didn't really like working weekends and holidays. So he's like, hey, come on over here. Let's give it a shot. And here I am running our Texas branch and helping the other sales reps across the country when it comes to helping business owners, when it comes to saving rates, adding more ways of taking payments, things like that. So overall, we like to think of ourselves as the one-stop shop for all your payment processing needs.
Oh, very cool. And for the business owners out there, payment processing kind of an important piece when it comes to business, right? It's kind of
Just a little
hard
bit.
to take payments if we don't have some sort of way to process those payments.
Yep.
So I'm excited to kind of dig into some of that. And for those that are listening, Kris, you had mentioned being able to be involved in the community and things like that. And you were just chatting beforehand that even just recently, about a month ago, you had a chance to kind of share some of this knowledge with those within the Round Rock Chamber community and things like that. So it is really cool to see that, and it's a big piece of why I wanted to be able to sit down with you here today too. But why don't we start with what are some of the primary questions? You've been in the industry for a long time, especially for maybe some of the newer business owners out there, or some of those that I don't know, have been in their business for a long time and just have never really changed or thought about changing payment processing. Um, what are some of the core questions that you tend to see from business owners that they just want to know more about when it comes to the payment processing industry?
I mean, this industry is just so in depth and so robust. You get a little bit of everything, but ultimately, one of the most common questions I'm sure that majority of people are going to ask is how much money can you save me or what's your bottom dollar? But at the end of the day, we don't like to think of that because we know we can save you money or we can at least match your rates. But at the same time, we want to make sure you're processing the correct way. So
Mm.
that comes with our questions leading up to that is how are you looking to take payments? How do you run your business? Because we want to make sure we utilize all our softwares, point of sale systems, integration, things like that, that ultimately point you in the right direction to make sure you're taking payments correctly. Because if you're not, that can make your rates go up. That could ultimately make you not be as efficient as you can be, things like that. So I would say one of the most common questions obviously are how low can you get? How much money can you save me? But other ones are what integrations do you have within softwares? Because a lot of softwares these days they can allow third-party integrations, but some of them are strictly, hey, we have one payment processor, it's this way or the highway. So a lot of this comes with in-depth research or just knowledge on the industry as well. But there's a lot of different ways you can process whether we have an integration or not. We can find a loophole, a way around, or even reach out to the software and get a full-on integration as well. But overall, I'd say the most common questions are: can you save me money? How can you improve the way you take payments? Can you add more ways of taking payments? Basically, just kind of the simple things when it comes to make this as easy as possible for me, while at the same time I don't have to spend after hours doing my batching out at the end of the day with all my transactions
Mhm.
or making sure my money's getting funded, things like that. So it's like, how do you make my life easier when it comes to the merchant processing side of things? And ultimately, that's what we're here to do.
Nice. I like that. You had mentioned businesses knowing, whether they're taking payments or processing payments correctly. Um, Give me an example of that. What does it look like when you are connecting with somebody and maybe they're not optimizing it or they're not kind of processing things in the way that they should? What does that look like? If I don't know that I'm doing it today, what are some things that I should be kind of paying attention to?
How you're taking transactions is the biggest thing. So, like, let's say you're retail and everything is card present. You should have a terminal. You should be chipping your card. You should be Apple Pay, Android Pay, Google Pay, basically contactless payments. You should be doing that. I've even some businesses around here in the Central Texas area, I've come across their full line retail. But then what they're doing is they're keying in their transactions into a gateway, or they are taking payments through an online portal or something like that. And ultimately, that's not the correct way of doing things, and transactions will downgrade, which ultimately means they'll run at a higher transaction rate, which is not good, obviously, for the
Mm,
owner because you're not taking transactions the right way. So ultimately, if you're a retail setting, you need to ensure that you are full on taking that transaction with an actual debit or credit card and being able to do it that way. And one little tidbit that I tell too is that some people, when I say improving the way you take transactions, that also means having terminals or however you're taking transactions that they're up to date and they're ready to take transactions the proper way. If you're still swiping your cards with a mag stripe, and that's the only way your terminal is able to do it, I recommend it right away to call your local payment processor and have whoever you're processing with to upgrade it, because that's where a lot of the fraud and chargebacks happen. Because now people are so good
mm,
at it is they instantly swipe it and then they walk out the store, they call their bank and be like, hey, I just saw a fraud transaction for $3,000 on this card and I didn't do that. Doesn't matter if they have you on camera. I could say, hey, my name's Kris Minton and I'm about to do fraud. A lot of times it still doesn't matter. It's just the way the transaction was taken and it wasn't proper, to where it's just helping you save your money, save your time, get away from the chargebacks and the fraud, and just ensuring that if you're a retail space, you're taking transactions the right way with retail. If you're more taking transactions through invoicing or you are able to do it over the phone, then we set you up with it's called a Moto account, where ultimately your account knows you're taking payments over the phone, you're doing things that way. So you're getting your transactions run at the right rate and they're not what we call downgrading to where you're getting charged at a higher rate, which obviously these days everyone's trying to save money where they can. And we're not trying to have that.
And you said a few things in there that I want to like kind of dig into a little bit more. Um, the, the first one is the kind of the fraud and chargeback piece. Obviously, that that's never a great thing for the actual consumers and things like that. It's not a great experience. Great experience doesn't lead to thinking fondly of the business they're doing business with. But as a business owner and having chargebacks or kind of different fraud claims, things like that, that's painful, especially if you're a razor thin margin type of a business and not pulling a whole bunch of money in like that. I feel like that tends to be one of those areas that maybe is often overlooked and not really thought about, when businesses think of different inherent risk and things like that. But that's got to be a big piece of why it's important to look at these different things.
Correct. Yeah, chargebacks are huge. Even if you're a business owner today and you're listening to this and you feel like you only get maybe one chargeback a month or one every few months, it doesn't matter because all it takes is one or two big chargebacks. And at that point, then it could, like you said, if you're right on that line of being profitable or not, that could really put you under for a month or two, and then that sets you back and you're not sure what to do. So at that point, just ensure that when you talk to your rep or whoever it is that's your payment processor, ensure you're taking transactions the right way, and then make sure like, hey, if I do get a chargeback, do I have any chargeback guidelines? Does anyone on your team help me with it? Do I get notifications? Because with chargebacks, you only have a certain amount of time to respond to them, and then you automatically lose no matter what. So make sure that whoever you're processing with, they either have a platform for you to use to either fight chargebacks, put in the information you need, or that someone on that team will give you a notification like, hey, we saw there's a chargeback. Please respond in a certain amount of time, or we can help you with it. And that's one of the great things about ECS payments is that if you have problems with chargebacks, we can help you with it. Our merchant service team is, I mean, I could be biased, but I think they're one of the best in the industry because everything for us is in-house. That's another thing that separates us from other processors is
Mm.
a lot of processors, a third party, their risk team, their underwriting team, their customer service. Everything is in-house at our corporate office. So anyone you talk to in any department, it's at our corporate office and everyone understands our solutions, our products, the way we do things. And back to our fearless leader, Fadi understands that people go through things. So let's say you might have had an early termination fee, but we understand something happened or something's going on in your life. We might just wipe and be like, you know what? We understand what's going on. We understand maybe the solution wasn't for you or your business had to shut down because some medical bills started piling up. We're like, you know what? We'll just wipe out the early termination fee. No harm, no foul. We'll just end your contract. I hope everything goes well with you. Let's move on. If you need anything in the future, whether it's to be with us or not, let me know and we'll be here for you, kind of thing. So, but kind of back to chargebacks ultimately is that you just got to make sure you have at least a procedure or something in line to where you know when you're getting chargebacks and you know how to fight chargebacks.
Ooh, that's an important piece. The having some of the procedures and things like that can save you a lot of issues in business, regardless of which pieces you're putting processes in for.
Correct.
The other thing that you had mentioned was if you're not just from a fraud standpoint, but if you're swiping versus chip versus tap to pay and all of that kind of stuff, and where my mind went. So a few months ago now, I had a chance to go to London. And I was shocked because I went to London and literally everywhere is tap to pay. Like there is a cashless city. Not only is it cashless, but like there's no place to swipe. Everything is literally people are pulling out their phones and doing Apple Wallet
You
based
almost like
things.
down on the other people look down on when you bring out cash. Like you accept cash, you're like, what is this?
I know it's weird, but where I think this is like really fascinating is one of the things I learned early on in business is when you're working with consumers or your end users, things like that, ease to make a purchase or ease to do business with you really does matter. The more friction points you have, the greater the likelihood of potentially losing a sale. You think of on time online retailers. You've got Amazon that finally went to the not finally, but was one of the first that went to like the one click buy. Think
Yep.
about ease to do business, right? So take this into the retail environment. And if you've got terminals where you still have to swipe and I can't just tap my card or something else like that, that's already creating a friction point.
Mhm.
And just from that standpoint, it can be important to think about it from a how do I make it easier for consumers to do business with me, and the likelihood of me being able to retain that business is actually a little bit greater, even if it's a small percentage when you've got lots of volume.
Yep.
That still does make a difference. Is that something that you kind of see on your end when you're having those conversations with businesses on why to make some of the transitions or upgrade their systems?
Most definitely. And I even have people that reach out to me like, hey, I'm still swiping cards. Can I have a terminal or something that just does contactless payments? Like it's just as simple as that, and it's for the same reasons. People like, oh, I have so many people asking, like, do you accept Apple Pay or this and that? But then I also bring to the conversations like, look, yes, we can do that. And that'll help the flow, especially if you get busy, like coffee shops, things like that. You want
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that line is moving quick because in the morning, you don't want that line getting too big because then you just get frustrated people. You get a little bit of everything. So not only are you moving the line, you're taking payments a lot quicker, but they're a lot safer. And that helps you with chargebacks as well, because ultimately, if you're chipping a card or doing the Apple Pay, Android Pay, I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's like 99% secure to where you're not losing chargebacks anymore. So that's why we encourage, if you're still swiping with the mag strip, that you shouldn't be doing that. You should at least upgrade a terminal to where you can chip the card and or do the contactless payments to where that'll help you with chargebacks, let alone help improve the way you're taking payments quicker and easier.
Nice. So let's talk a little bit about the processing fees. So I know that's an initial question that you said comes up a lot. I didn't want to, dwell too much on, what the fees are and things like that, but, maybe let's talk a little bit about how important it is to at least be auditing and taking a look at this as a business. We were talking very briefly before we jumped on here that for businesses that aren't overly financially savvy, like when you think of if I can cut my payment processing fees by even 0.5%, all of that flows directly down into the bottom line. It doesn't stop anywhere else. That's like additional profitability that actually comes into the business, which then you can reinvest. You can do different things with. Just take it as the owner because you need more profit. Whatever it is, you get to choose, right? So I wanted to take a minute and just kind of talk through why it's so important to go through that process and kind of how y'all approach that. Yes, there's different things we talked about before, but rates, profitability to the business, consistently looking at these things and having that conversation is really important. Share with us kind of your opinion and what you see out there.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I even tell my customers once a year, whether you want to do it at the end of the year, beginning of the year, summertime, whatever it is, always review your statements from that point to the 12 months prior to ensure that rates haven't changed, anything hasn't changed, or you can see your volume, anything transactions, because that's a big thing as well. But overall, it's just a matter of ensuring, because there are some processors that say, hey, your rate is this. And then 2 years down the line, you're like, wait a second, my rate was this, and now it's like 0.5% more. Why is that the case? I will say ECS payments does not do that. When you're locked in, you're locked in. So the only time we would adjust your rate without you knowing is if we're lowering your rates, which I'm sure you wouldn't be upset about. So just wanted to get that out there before we got this. But yeah, overall, it's the biggest thing that I tell merchants is, are you happy with your rates? Because I obviously want to see if they are. And two, are your rates set up the way you're taking transactions, whether transaction size, the amount of transactions, how much your volume is monthly? Because let's there's processors out there that they really have one pricing structure. Let's say that it's just you, no matter what, debit card, credit card, whether it's a $5 transaction, $20,000, your rate's going to be 2.75 and 10 cents. Well, that sounds great at some extent, but at the same time, let's say you're a company that takes a majority of debit cards. You should not be charged more than 1% out the door for a debit card because they run so low. Your debit card should not be priced at that. So if you, let's say you're taking 75% debit cards as a business and 25% credit cards, but your rate is a flat 2.75 and 10 cents per transaction, you're paying at least, and I'm saying at least, 1.5% to 1.75, probably more than you should on debit cards when they're getting pushed through. But if you're accepting a lot of credit cards and not many debit cards, then 2.75 can be good, but it also depends on how many transactions you're taking a month or your transaction size. If you're accepting a bunch of transactions over $2,000 or $1,000, 2.75 is not for you because you're going to be paying a lot in fees on that. So that's another thing that we talk about when it comes to pricing. Like, look, it's not a matter of, hey, I can give you whatever you need, bottom line. I want to make sure, one, you're taking transactions the right way, and two, that we put you on a correct pricing structure. And that's what makes this a little bit different than a lot of the process out there, is that we have multiple pricing structures and multiple platforms we can put customers on. So our CEO, he sits on the board of a few banks, he owns a few banks, he's partnered with a bunch of banks, and all the way from big time banks to your smaller kind of credit unions, things like that, to where he wants to ensure if you walk in the door and ask us like, hey, what can you do for us? It's not a matter of if we can do something, it's what can we do for you? So
Mm.
at the end of the day, it's just like, hey, pricing, yes, I understand, is a big thing. Yes, I know you want to save money, but we want to ensure first, before we talk about what we can save you or what our pricing is, how you're taking payments, what you're doing when it comes to your goods and services, to ensure we put you on the right structure. And then we will show you what that rate, percentage, savings, things like that look like from there. So it's just, like I said, it's not so much cookie cutter like a lot of processors think. It's more of, how can we help you, and let's make sure we set you up correctly, because if we do, down the line, when you're growing as a business, whether your volume's growing up, things like that, that pricing structure will still suit you, whether you lose 100 grand a month when it comes to volume, which we hope you never do, or you gain 100 grand a month in volume over the next 12 months. It doesn't matter. That pricing structure and that price that we're at is going to be perfect. And the thing we want you to focus on is getting customers in the door, how to grow your business, things like that, because we don't want you to worry about the money side of thing, which ultimately we know you're going to do no matter what, but we want that to be as less stressful as possible for you.
I love it. So let's talk transition for a minute. I can see, I'm speculating out there for other business owners that are always busy and have everything going on and 100 different things that are important to do within the business. Usually banking related services or financial related services tend to be some of the ones where it's like, it's pretty sticky just because I don't want to deal with a transition. What does that look like? So if you walk in, you have a conversation with somebody and it's like, yes, we can save you money. Yes, that we can upgrade things. Yes, all of these things can be implemented. We now need to make that transition. What does that look like? How is it an easy process? Is it a little kind of, is there a lot of friction with it? How do you guide someone through the process of actually making a transition?
So basically transitioning from one processor to another.
Yeah.
Okay, so ultimately, everything's agreed on, rates, pricing, all the above, everything looks good. Um, you ultimately don't need the merchant to update their bank account, anything like that, as long as their bank account allows them to conduct business in the actual genre that they're in, then that's fine, that's good enough. And ultimately, the transition's pretty easy, at least for us. Some processors, obviously, it kind of just varies here and there, but for us, it's relatively easy. How I tell my merchants is, once you're ready to go, we send you a pre-app form, basically, that just gives us the general information, legal name, DBA name, certain things like that. And then depending on your industry, we'd need like voided check, driver's license, and maybe one or two other things to just get the initial underwriting process started. But once you send me that form back, I would fill out the paperwork myself so the business owner doesn't waste their time having to do it, ask any further questions, things like that, because we know that can just be a tactful thing. And if I'm doing it day in and day out, I can crank those out like that. So I fill out the paperwork myself, and then I send it to them for electronic signatures, and then they look it over, sign it. Then I get it into my underwriting and risk team. And depending on how big the account is, it's a pretty quick turnaround. It's within 48 hours, give or take, usually, that we have them up and running, unless my underwriting team might find something like, hey, can we just have clarification on that? Or sometimes we'll have business owners that have multiple businesses and they actually send in the wrong voided check, and it's like, oh, sorry, wrong business, I meant to send that one. So it's like little things like that. But our underwriting team is fantastic when it comes to underwriting the proper way, because there's a lot of processors out there that'll just be like, look, we can get you up and running within 2 hours, but they're not really underwriting you. So what they're doing is they're getting you up and running, they're getting your merchant account, and then you'll get going, you'll have all this stuff, and then 2 weeks later they'll shut you down and not tell you why and be like, you're good to go. And it's like, what happened? It's like, well, we finally did our underwriting, and it's like, well, I have all this money now, and sometimes they'll put you on reserve and not withhold that, and it's just a whole thing. But at the end of the day, it's a pretty simple process, and our underwriting team does a great job of, yeah, we might ask you an extra question or two to make sure we have things set up correctly or we understand how you're getting set up. But once you're set up with us, you're set up for life and we're good to go, unless you obviously start doing stuff you're not supposed to and we find out. That's a whole different ball game. But as long as you're doing what you say you're doing and we get you approved, there's really not a reason for us to come back for at any point, because like I said, our risk and underwriting team do such a great job with what they do. I can't say enough good things about them.
Nice. I love that. I think that provides some good clarity too. And if someone's going to make a transition, the greater the clarity of what that's going to look like, I
Mhm.
think often makes it a little bit easier to make the leap. So I think let's kind of round out our conversation on let's call it forward looking future. What do you see as upcoming in the future for kind of payment processing, merchant services, anything on the horizon that you're excited for, nervous about, just kind of interesting to be thinking about when it comes to businesses being able to continue to process payments in the future and different technologies that could be adopted as we continue to move forward.
I mean, this industry is just always ever changing. I mean, I will say a lot of business owners out there are still like to be all cash just because they don't want to have to uh, low key report their earnings to an extent, or they just feel like cash is king, as that's a huge phrase for individuals that like that. But at the same time, cash is becoming obsolete. People are just saying, hey, some companies, they don't even carry it. So if you walk in and they're like, yeah, we're basically fully credit and debit card, it's like, here's a 10. It's like, I don't have change for that. You're gonna have to put that in a tip jar or figure out another way. So I would say it's just ultimately there's not going to be as many cash solutions out there or people wanting to deal with like the whole cash ability. It's just a matter of being able to find the right solutions that can get you in and out the door, your customers in and out the door. But I would say overall, it's just like point of sale systems are always upgrading. Who can have the most optimization when it comes to most apps and most this and easiest with that. But like I said, sometimes there's just too much going on to where it's just simple. Most people just want a point of sale system, some inventory tracking, maybe, and simple payments. But other than that, I would say the payment industry is in a really good spot right now when it comes to what solutions are being offered, not just by us, but other companies in the same genre. Um, yeah, because it doesn't seem like there's that much new stuff coming on. ACH is improving. There are some market types like check cashers. That's a big one because that's considered more of a high risk industry.
Mm,
And not too, I would say, well, it wasn't too long ago we came out with our pin based solution and pinless debit solution for that industry. And for a lot of the processors out there that know our pinless and pin based, they know it's one of the best in the game for that industry. And it's just ultimately it's more of these CEOs trying to figure out other ways to accept payments, make it easier on the banks to accept certain merchants, things like that. It's really not much on the actual taking payment side. It's more of how can we make more industries more exclusive in being
mm,
able to take debit and credit card processing, because we have like a lot of industries that keep going back and forth, like CBD and cannabis and the guns and ammo and things like
yeah.
that. There's just so many regulations and things like that. It's hard to find merchant accounts for those industries. But I will say ECS payments can do high risk, low risk, medium risk. We have the number one software for the guns and ammo industry. So it's like I said, it's just a matter of finding partnerships and growing from there. Overall, I'd say the industry is just growing little by little, and there's not like a big thing. It's like, oh, this is going to change the processing industry. It's like, oh, you made that little tweak. That's going to help with maybe the interchange rates on the back end, or it's going to help the banks be able to provide more for the customers, or even just the merchant service providers like us being able to provide different solutions or more than one solution all in one thing for the customers. So I would say overall it's just a matter of getting back and just, at least for the business owners, ensuring you're taking payments the right way, ask if there's any new solutions that you feel like could benefit your company that's coming up, whether it's a gift and loyalty or if you're needing merchant cash advances or loans or anything like that. Ask your payment provider, see if they can or can't provide that stuff. If not, search them out. Search for someone that you feel like you that can help you outgrow your business. Don't wait around for your provider to be like, oh, we can have that in the next 6 months to a year, but you know someone else can. If this will benefit your business now and lower your bottom dollar, go for it. And then if you feel like you want to go back to that company at that point, great. But overall, I feel like the industry is just always moving and always improving. It's just little things here and there
Mm.
that's just making us just it's just helping the industry improve so much and the customer satisfaction too with being able to put more than one solution. So that's one of the big things today too is that a lot of processors really only provide one or two solutions to where it's like, okay, I have a payment processor for my credit card solution, I have a payment processor for my gift and loyalty, I have a payment
Mm.
processor for my e-commerce, and it's like all those fees for each company add up, you know? So trying to find someone that can provide multiple solutions, ECS can, but it's just like being able to find someone with multiple solutions to get your bottom dollar down is huge. So, I mean, like I said, overall, it's just it's a crazy industry to be a part of. So ensure that you're talking to someone that's knowledgeable and not afraid to give you the answers, whether they're good or bad. Because that's one thing I tell my customers, like, hey, I'm going to give you the correct answers, whether you're going to yell at me or you're going to love them, or it's going to be like, that's not what I was expecting. I'm just trying to be honest with you, whether you move forward with me or not. I want you to be as knowledgeable as possible because there are a lot of moving parts and there are companies that take advantage of a lot of companies, mainly the smaller startups, things like that, because obviously the bigger corporation at that point, they know what they're doing, things. So if you're newer or you're smaller, you don't understand, make sure you ask the right questions or you reach out to someone that you know that could be in the industry. It's like, hey, help me out. Make sure that I'm being set up the right way and saving the money that I can. Because at the end of the day, you need to be worrying about your business, not about the money flowing in and out on your payment processing side.
Yeah, I love that. All right, I'm gonna potentially open up a can of worms. I
I
did
love
not
it.
preempt you with this question, and you
Uh-oh.
do not have to. It can be totally opinion based versus company stance or anything else like that. But I'm
Okay.
curious. I have not seen a lot of businesses transition to this yet, but I know that there's still some talk of where does cryptocurrency fit into payment processing down the line. Does blockchain technology start to kind of find its way into payment processing? What's kind of your opinion? What if any kind of research have you done around any of that? And I'm genuinely curious on, is that something that business owners should kind of keep their eye on, just kind of wait and see what happens? What's your thoughts on that world?
Crypto is a very hot topic in our industry, but it's a very hard thing to get approved with the banks at that point because the fact crypto is changing almost in an hourly 30 minutes it's changing all the time to where let's say you take a transaction for $1,000 but then you batch out at the end of the day and that cryptocurrency's gone down $500, so then ultimately you're going to be out that money because that cryptocurrency when it finally gets paid out will most likely get paid out not at time of transaction but once you're getting funded. So it's our CEO, he's thought about bringing that on as a solution or trying to figure out a solution, but at the end of the day, he's just there's too many moving parts, and when he finds a solid way of being able to apply that to every day to where it doesn't put the business owner at risk, then that's a conversation. But there are some processors that somewhat allow it, but it's more for crazy high risk industries that like kratom. That's a big one that a lot of processors don't do, but it's like, yeah, there's a processor in overseas that allow it, but it's more cryptocurrency. You have to buy an electric wallet, then buy cryptocurrency, then you can buy the product.
Yeah.
And it's like a lot of times when customers go on those websites and kind of have that feng shui, I guess they kind of get turned off because it's like, am I getting scammed? Is this like, do I like this is a little too much? So cryptocurrency is definitely a hot topic and it's something that's being reviewed, I would say, on a weekly, if not monthly basis in our industry. But it's just such a crazy topic and such a crazy way of trying to figure out how we can solidify pricing and crypto and getting that into the processing industry to where it sticks is just a whole other ball game. But it's definitely something that I keep up with and I'm very intrigued in, because when that does happen, that comes back to your question earlier. That's going to probably be the next like big thing. If that comes up, that'll be on your local news all the way to your nationwide news. Like cryptocurrency is finally being accepted and in all your major providers. Like imagine going to your local like Stater Brothers, Albertsons, HEB, whatever it is, and you're like, oh, I'll pay like a third of a Bitcoin or whatever it is you're paying at the time. Just for it's like I don't feel like paying cash or card day. I'm just gonna pay with
Mhm.
crypto, and it's just such a crazy concept, and just the crypto industry as well is just kind of a up and down thing to where it's definitely hard to be able to get it into the banks, get it solidified, and have them have trust in it as well to ensure that the
Yeah.
banks as well aren't going to lose that money when they invest in it.
Well, it's an interesting, topic to kind of think about. So for the business owners that are like, oh, I've heard of it, but I don't really know. It's thinking about the converting of it is actually the biggest issue, or one of the biggest issues,
Yes.
because you're still buying your goods and services. If you're a coffee shop, as an example, you still have to buy your beans and your cups and all your roasting material with actual dollars. So even if you transact in crypto, you have to convert that into the thing that you can actually buy your goods and services with. So it's almost because of that in the volatility that makes it difficult. If everything in the world was under, I don't know, Bitcoin as an example, if that was the only thing being exchanged, then you wouldn't have that conversion piece, and you wouldn't need
Mm-hmm.
to worry about some of that stuff. So it's a very interesting topic, and probably one of the biggest shifts in, like, I don't know, our financial world, if and when it ever does come to pass. But I'm glad you kind of mentioned it, because as you kind of think through how does this all work, it becomes really difficult to transact in it if it's not adopted everywhere. It's
Well,
kind
and
of like
exactly kind of what you just said too. Someone could pay for that cup of coffee, and by the time they walk out the door, that crypto amount could have already changed by the time they even grab their coffee and get out the door. And that could
yeah.
be good or bad for the owner. It just depends on which way it went.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So, Kris, as we kind of bring this conversation to a close today, if you could leave the audience with one or two things on your industry, that you just, hey, business owners, this is the thing you need to know. What would you want to leave them with today?
At the end of the day, just make sure one, you're set up the right way to take payments. Two, you're you're not getting taken advantage of on your rates. Make sure your company gives you your rates, kind of what that effective rate is. If you kind of want to know what your effective rate is, look at a monthly statement, take your monthly fees and divide them by your overall volume, and that'll give your overall effective rate. If your overall effective rate is 3% or above, then you should be asking for your rates to be lowered, something along those lines. If you're anywhere in the 2%, it's decent. Low 2%, you're great. Sub 2%, I don't even know what processor put you on that, but stay there and don't move. But if you're right around like 2.5 ish, give or take, then you're on great pricing. If anything, just make sure you're taking payments the right way, or if there's any new ways for you to improve the way you're taking payments for your business, because who knows, you could be taking payments one way and you kind of shifted your business model and you could be taking payments a better way. So just ensure your rates are doing well, your funding is happening when it's supposed to, you're not having a lot of problems and having to call in a lot, or like I said, just rates, and you're able to take transactions. And if you're happy, great. But like I said, just always make sure at least once a year you check, make sure everything's running smoothly the way it is, your pricing hasn't changed, or don't be afraid to pester your processor once a year. Be like, hey, is there any wiggle room to lower my rates a little bit? Because another year's gone by and I'm with you and I'm a loyal customer that's been with you for 3 years, 5 years. Majority of the time they will do it, or it's like, hey, I literally put you on our cost. If I put you any lower, then I have to pay for your fees at the end of the month. And that's just something, because sometimes it's that's just how it works. But yeah, at the end of the day, just make sure you're happy with your provider. You're not getting taken advantage of with your rates. And that if you have any questions that you do ask him, don't be afraid. There's no such thing as a bad question in your processor or your whoever's working for you. should not have a problem with you reaching out. They should always be happy that, like, hey, glad you reached out. Let me confirm this for you, or let me solidify that you're on a great rate. The POS system you have is still great. So just ultimately, don't be afraid to ask questions, pester them, make them mad that you have to keep getting the answers that you want. Because at the end of the day, it's your money, it's your business. You shouldn't be afraid to ask those questions and make sure you're doing things the right way.
Oh, I'm glad you said it because it's definitely something that I would encourage is a no. Keep going, get
Yeah,
the answers that you
exactly.
need. Like this is you own the relationship. Come on now.
And that's
Um,
that's what I say. I tell when I talk to my customers, like, any other questions, there's no bad question. Like, or if you think of anything right when you got off the phone, call me back or send me an email. Like, I want to make sure you're comfortable with everything and you don't have any further questions or anything lingering over your head. You should be as comfortable and solidified as possible.
Yeah, I love that. So for those in the audience who are like, this conversation was amazing, opened my eyes to everything else, and maybe I should have a conversation with Kris. How can people find you? Like, what's the best way to get in contact with you? If they just want to have a conversation, learn a little bit more about ECS and the things that you guys do, where can we advise them to go for more information?
Ultimately, you can go to the website, ecspayments.com, and just fill out. We have a little contact us now, put a little information like, hey, I heard Kris on the podcast. I'd like to hear more information. Or just type in, hey, I think my rates are too high. Can I get an analysis? And that's what I do all the time. And I do that for free. Some processors charge for it. So just reach out through the website, or you can email me at christopher.minton@ecspayments.com, and that's Christopher the K, just to make sure. But yeah, ultimately, just reach out and be like, hey, can you give me that analysis to look over? And I'll look over your statement, look over your fees, rates, everything, let you know, like, hey, everything looks great, or your fees are a little high, you could lower them, or there's some fees in here that shouldn't even be in here, so you should be able to eliminate those, things like that, or just talk you through whatever you want. If you just have general questions about the industry, I'm always here to help anyone and everyone, whether you own a business or you know someone that owns a business, send them my way and I'm here to help.
Amazing. Kris, this has been absolutely so much fun this
I
afternoon.
appreciate
So
it. It has.
thank you so much for sitting down and doing this. For those that are listening, that are watching, please reach out to Kris. You know, just even if it's just send him an email saying, "Hey, saw you on the podcast. Great conversation. Just wanted to connect." You know, that's the beauty of kind of this local community and things like that. So let's make sure we connect. We do that. And Kris, just thank you so much for being a part of the podcast today.
Appreciate it, Tanner. Have a great day.